Hello, thank you very much for attending today. My name is Austin, the speaker currently, and I will be presenting our project by Alex Pittman and Austin Baker, myself, of course. And our historical figure is actually going to be anonymous and is titled by presentation Menace or Potential Friend. So what anonymous is, because it's a bit different than some of the other ones, where instead of it being a direct purpose, anonymous is closer to an organization. Primarily on there, initially they did start as a group in 2003, and their name comes from with the way a collective message board website 4chan has its option to post anonymously, which it'll say like anonymous when you post as anonymous. So hence kind of where they get their name from, anonymous, is since that's where they started at. And primarily, when anonymous started, they did naturally go more towards pranks and just amassing a large amount of users to access the site or get in on a prank sort of thing. A lot of the earlier ones, were, for example, would be to go ahead and go to an online community and make new accounts and just do a whole lot of random posting that didn't make a lot of sense, but they basically were just messing around and having fun, essentially. Now, what the actual group anonymous is in itself is it's just a group of people. There's no specific, stipulations or anything like that, but a group of people with a vague, generalized goal or an outcome sort of thing. Now, some of the original groups that some of the original projects when Anonymous really started getting informed and famous out there was the very first major one was Project Journology in 2008, which basically the Anonymous, they collaborated to get a group of and series of protests where basically they were targeting the Church of Scientology, just pranking the church's businesses, sciences, everything like that, hacking their systems, targeting them, and doing generalized hacking procedures to go ahead and get into their systems. Now, additionally on there for it, some other information about Anonymous for it. Shortly, before that, of course, when Anonymous was really kind of getting going there, the Encyclopedia Dramatica. It was founded in 2004, originally as a parody site. However, with Anonymous not being a centralized group, they didn't have a specific way to communicate very well. So they basically used Encyclopedia Dramatica to go ahead and communicate between each other using articles on there. Now, at this current day, most governments in the world consider Anonymous to be a terrorist group simply due to the cyber hacking and general, cybersecurity related processes that they go through, where they will often target political or government issues. And of course, the main thing that makes Anonymous different than other famous people is that Anonymous has no definite leadership. I mean, in the past there have been groups. The most commonly talked about, as well as one of the first ones, was Lulzsec, which it was headed by Hector Monsegur on there. But other than that, most groups in Anonymous don't really have names. Basically, Anonymous is very loosely guided between its members. There's no real structure. But if I had to explain it, basically just a mob of people where they get behind an idea and push that idea as well as they can, being a group of unorganized people, which it has had some success for hacking and breaching cybersecurity in some instances. Now, the other portion, with it being a large group, one of the main things to consider is who is held accountable. Because with a lot of other people, if there's a specific person in security, in cybersecurity history, then that's one specific person. You can say for confidence, who did this, who did that. With Anonymous, since there is no real leadership or backbone, it isn't a well-defined entity. Most of anyone who's held accountable are individual members who act on behalf of Anonymous or under the banner of Anonymous. So instead of often governments or any sort of police forces, instead of holding Anonymous as a whole responsible, they hold specifically the person who does any cyber crimes responsible. Now, Anonymous, there are some positives, of course, on there, as with many different groups. With Anonymous, typically, I would say is closer more towards an activist group than what most people would think of being a terror group. Simply because, in general, Anonymous does for the most part, have positive goals in mind and positive social changes. Like, most of what they normally do is expose negative things about groups, organizations, governments, specific individuals, like, for example, the Church of Scientology, or in relation to some of the shadier things that the American government has done in the past. Additionally, Anonymous, since anyone can really help out under their banner, there have been individuals under Anonymous who have helped out those who are less informed or less fortunate to not be tech savvy in trying to help out with some situations. Now, unfortunately, with it being such a large mob of people, basically, there's no one to be held accountable in the group itself. Anyone can say they're part of Anonymous, and that being said, some members have specifically targeted people, just because they felt like it, just for laughs, essentially, on it, which is a downside. Anonymous can basically, since it isn't a single entity, it's very much, they do whatever they want, essentially. But the same way that in contemporary times, large protests or groups or organizations or activists often, while they would be marching under a specific banner or flag, they might not necessarily have the best goals in mind, or they may just do whatever they feel like. Now, with Anonymous, for it, many people view them as good, many people view them as bad. For it, one of the things that I hope you discuss is potentially on how you view them after doing some research yourself on your end, for if you think they're overall good or if they're overall bad. Myself, Austin, presenting it here, I see it more of just the same thing as being an activist, but in today's current time and technology than in the history before us. Now, some of the things that I would like you guys to go ahead and try to do in the discussion post on there is to go ahead and answer these two questions on there. In what way is hacktivism similar to actions done by activists, in like the last 100 years, like with the like the civil rights marches and everything like that? How is what groups like Anonymous have done similar to other actions that have been done by people in the past for a good cause? And then additionally, I'd like you to, after doing some research in that, seeing if you consider Anonymous good or bad as an entity. Specifically, some of the things that could really help with your decision is with them not being an organized group. For it, it can be hard to really determine if the group is good or bad, since there's so much how much they can vary between individual users. And I do have some references in here where I was taking a look into some information. But once again, my name is Austin, and thank you very much for listening to our presentation. You have a great rest of your evening.